you think about, accidents, cancers, all sorts of things that are causing people to die. MAID is right up there, number 4. Like how far along are we going to go until it's number 3, number 2, number 1?
Yeah.
I mean, is that the goal here? It just goes to show the absolute disrespect for life that the Canadian government has. Number 4, number 4 cause. It's absolutely insane, and I don't think that was the case in 2016. But again, you just look at this exponential rise in assisted suicides happening here, and here we are, number 4. Absolutely crazy.
Dan Dix, thanks for joining me today, man. It's really nice to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, dude, yeah, I told you before we started, but you've been on a very short list for me for a long time. I'm a huge fan of everything you do. I love like that it's informal. If you're either walking on a path, outside somewhere on a hike, or you're in your car, but you're just like 10, 15 minutes of just some of the most condensed information. And like, I find myself frequently rewinding because I'm like, did he really just say that? Like, is that really what's happening here? And so that's my long-winded way of saying, dude, I'm so super excited to talk to you today, man. So what caught my attention from you right off the bat was your coverage of the medical assistance in dying program in Canada. We have a lot of American viewers, and I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me like, dude, is that actually happening in Canada? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's happening. And it's way worse than you think it is. Like whatever's reaching you is the sanitized version. So Dan, let's just jump right in. Can you tell everybody what the MAID program is, when it started, what it originally purported itself to be, and what it is now?
Sure. For anybody who's just hearing about this now, MAID stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. Really, it's assisted suicide. Let's just call it what it is. And it was legalized in Canada in 2016 at the time under Justin Trudeau. And back then, it was all about, people who are terminally ill, people who have, just pain off the charts, should be able to end their lives, kind of thing. And back then they were saying, this is just for the terminally ill. Like it's never going to, go beyond that. Fast forward a few years and it's gone way beyond that. We've gotten to the point now, 9 years later, where this MAID is being offered, not only offered, but doctors are now essentially forced to suggest it as part of a therapy treatment for people who are suffering from any range of issues. And now we're not talking about terminally ill people anymore. We're talking about people who are literally in poverty, people who are depressed and not feeling great, people who are not getting the adequate care from the slow system, and they just want to speed things up and say goodbye. It's a fast track to death that they've designed here in Canada, and it's been accelerating exponentially. The last numbers I've seen, released from I think 2023, is upwards of 60,000 people, and you can extrapolate the numbers to figure out what the 2025 numbers are going to be. And we're looking at about 90,000 people to date who have been killed essentially by this MAID program. So it's eugenics in a nutshell. It's Canada's become one of the leading countries in terms of carrying this out on its people. I once interviewed somebody named, I've interviewed a number of times. Her name is Angelina Ireland, and she runs a Delta hospice, where they have end-of-life care for people who are naturally dying. And she had the government come in and tell her, you have to do MAID if they request it. And as a Christian, she says, no, this goes against my beliefs. They literally took her building away from her that she raised millions of dollars to build. And even though MAID was available to people right across the street, if these patients really wanted it, they could just go across the street and get it. But the government forced her to shut down her facility. And she's now running one of the biggest resistance programs to MAID. But this just goes to show you the lengths that the Canadian government is willing to go to literally kill people who are just sad, who are, broke. They're now offering it to veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. They're offering it to, people with minor disabilities. It's coming up all the time. I've had people email me saying, I get the offer. I go in, I tell them what my problems are, and they suggest MAID. So it's accelerated from what started as, hey, this is the right thing to do for people who are terminally ill, which I disagree with, to anyone and everyone should have access to being able to kill themselves. It's absolutely ludicrous.
And I think in one of the reports you did, you said, according to the 2023 numbers, MAID accounted for roughly 4% of deaths in Canada.
Yeah, that's true. Quebec is one of the leaders in this. And, you think about, accidents, cancers, all sorts of things that are causing people to die. MAID is right up there, number 4. Like how far along are we going to go until it's number 3, number 2, number 1? Yeah. I mean, is that the goal here? It just goes to show the absolute disrespect for life that the Canadian government has. Number 4 cause. It's absolutely insane. And I don't think that was the case in 2016. But again, you just look at this exponential rise in assisted suicides happening here, and here we are, number 4. Absolutely crazy.
It's demonic. It's evil. Like, I'm a Christian myself, and I spent a lot of time like contemplating these ideas, of evil and God and the devil and all these these ideas that repeat over and over again in Christian texts, right? And, I've always seen evil as being something that is an absence of God, essentially, right? And what Canada looks like to me now is a place where God is completely absent. Mm-hmm. Like the spirit isn't here anymore. And therefore, these men, these people have just been given free rein to do whatever they want to do. And what we are reaching is the logical conclusion of suicidal empathy and compassion, mm-hmm. where now we're just being compassionate by taking people out of their misery who aren't living as well as we do, whatever that means, whatever criteria you're grading that against. And it's beyond scary. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, I think you nailed it with saying that God has been removed from the picture. Because, the reason why human beings have value is because we've been created in God's image, meaning we've been designed by a creator to reflect his character and to love him and to love one another. Now, if you take God out of the picture, essentially what we are is cosmic accidents, highly evolved cosmic accidents who, therefore, the value only comes up of what's being created in our brains. And so essentially for the atheist, what's the difference of stepping on a cockroach or stepping on a human being? I mean, this is where, we obviously draw the line. Human beings have value because we've been created in the image of God. You remove God from the picture, and all of a sudden it opens up the floodgates for these guys to be able to justify engaging in these eugenics programs. And that's exactly it. The last couple of prime ministers, you got Mark Carney right now, you got Justin Trudeau. These guys purport to be Christians, but they're not. You may recognize, like, Justin Trudeau never said, we pray for these people. It was always, my thoughts are only with you. He's clearly not a praying man. So when you have someone like that out at the helm, leading everything, of course it's going to go down this insanely dark path to where they can engage in things like assisted suicide without a single thought. You remove God from the picture, and all of a sudden you're left with pure evil and chaos.
Right. We're just bags of meat with no real value other than what we generate. Right. And if you stop generating, then you're nothing.
Yeah. And to their extent, even if you're not, producing value, even if you're just, let's say, a baby in the womb, you haven't even had a chance to prove yourself yet. All of a sudden, you too are subject to being slaughtered by the state, literally by the state.
Yeah. And, I had a young guy reach out to me months ago. I'm a pretty sensitive guy. I get moved to tears quite often. So if I do end up crying during this podcast episode, sorry, everybody. Sorry, Dan. But he was part of a unit in, I think, Afghanistan. And the Humvee that he was inside of drove over an IED. And the IED exploded. I think everybody in the Humvee except for him died. He had to have major reconstructive surgery all over his body. And he was talking about his recovery, right? And how hard things have been. And he said, the psychological trauma is far worse than any of the physical recovery. He's talking about the nightmares and the memories that he has of the day and panic attacks and just total PTSD. And I couldn't help but think to myself that if he reached out for help now, they would probably recommend MAID for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's exactly what they're doing. Guys like that are being suggested, hey, why not think about just ending it? It's so sickening and sad.
It's just so dystopic. It's like, how did we end up here? How did we get to a place where we would rather just kill people than help them? And look, at the end of the day, I had a feeling this was coming because of the economic damage of COVID-19. They were going to have to find shortcuts because it was so devastating to everything. But this is not the way to do it. This isn't the way to do it. And look, in the bureaucracy's point of view, we're just numbers. We are just X amount of dollars in the system. So the more people you can remove from the system, the more X amount of dollars you can save, the better your GDP looks, the better your economy looks on paper, the easier it is to sell to those who still remain. But we're killing people, right? Like, what is the value of a human life? And according to this bureaucracy that has grown, to encompass everything, our dollar value is what, 100 grand, 200 grand?
On top of that, you add in the multi-billion-dollar industry of organ harvesting, which is
Yes.
another side of this picture where what happens to these people once they go? What's happening to their bodies? And we find out that there's actually a huge, basically underground organ harvesting operation happening where billions and billions of dollars are being made here. And they've even introduced certain bills that would suggest that you are already opting into the program unless you say otherwise. And a lot of people don't even realize that, if they take up the offer for MAID, that their organs are going to be donated, on their behalf, not even donated, sold, and so we're talking billions of dollars are being made here. It's literally that dark.
Yeah, I read a recent story, I think, where there was somebody who accepted MAID and then their heart was sold to somebody in the United States, correct?
Yeah, I've heard of all sorts of situations like that. Yep.
Yeah, and it very closely resembles the Chinese system once again. I go to this in virtually every podcast episode I do because what it looks like to me is that China's system is being grown to a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And this organ harvesting aspect is just a part of that, right? Like in China, there are numerous reports of Uyghur Muslims who have been killed by the Chinese regime and then having their organs sold on the black market.
Yep. Yeah,
And
there's the Falun Gong. These people, are highly healthy, spiritual. They focus on health and meditation and things like that. So they have some of the healthiest organs there are, and they've been targeted not only for political reasons, but because of the fact that their organs are of the highest value to the Chinese. And I would agree, China's turning into a bit of a blueprint for the new world order
yeah,
globally. So things are kind of tested out there, and they can gauge on how people are going to react to certain things, and then extrapolate that out to the rest of the West.
and what's difficult about these subjects is, like you just stumbled a little bit on New World Order, because when you say those phrases and words, the conspiracy meters go off everywhere, right? So we have to find clever new ways to talk about this stuff and reword things so that, we aren't automatically alt-right conspiracy theory Nazi podcaster guys, right?
And that's by design as well.
Yes.
I remember a long time ago, if you used to look up the term New World Order, you would get things like Wikipedia entries and stuff that just say, it's this conspiracy theory about, a one world government and stuff. Now, if you do it, there's two entries. Here's the conspiracy, and here's what it really is. Yeah. People trying to make the world a better place. That's all that this really is. But that's all by design as well.
It's just like the MAID thing, right? It's like you say eugenics, we say compassionate healthcare, right? You say fascism, we say public-private partnerships. It's just the way that these things are constantly redressed in order to sell it to a public who are placated and deeply asleep. And with MAID, like I listened to an episode, I listened to Kelsey Sharon talking to Jordan Peterson about it, and she described the process. It is not a peaceful process whatsoever, man. Like, you basically drown in your own fluids.
Mm-hmm.
And even beyond that, even if it was a peaceful process, once again, like, I'll tell you another story. I spoke to another young guy recently who just conquered leukemia after 16 years. 16 years he suffered, went through procedure after procedure. He had a doctor who wouldn't quit, who was determined to save his life. Finally, in the end, he got a bone marrow transplant. It worked. This year is his first year of being leukemia free at 33 years old. Wow. Right? And again, I'm thinking to him in my head when I'm talking to this guy, thank God for that doctor. Because, as you recently reported, doctors are now being pressured to offer MAID as an alternative, right?
That's right. Yeah, they're not only pressured, it's part of their mandate. They have to suggest all options. And of course, MAID has been included in the menu of options. And so if they are not suggesting this as an option to people, then they're technically not doing their job anymore. So, the health field has drastically changed ever since the Rockefeller Foundation kind of started manipulating it like decades and decades ago. I got a good interview with G. Edward Griffin about that, where he delves into the history of how the Germans and the Americans kind of teamed up to put forth big pharma, and they put their people on the board of every single university and medical school in order to start implementing these ideas that natural healthcare is quackery, and that petroleum-based pharmaceuticals is what we need to start pushing the world into that direction. Yeah. And you fast forward a couple of decades, and that's what it's all about: a massive money-making machine and a killing machine. So yeah, absolutely crazy.
So you mentioned the Rockefeller Foundation, and there are a number of these groups, that stem from, elitist families and elitist people that are involved in this push toward MAID, which ironically, they themselves are also involved in a push toward living forever. And I've long held the theory since I first started seeing these videos popping up from places like the World Economic Forum with what's his name, Yuval Harari, talking about living forever, that these people know exactly where they're going when they're out of here. And so they are dedicating themselves to staying here for as long as possible. I couldn't think, once again, as a person who believes in God, as a person who follows Jesus Christ, I could not imagine never going to meet my creator, never going back to the source. But then I thought, well, I have no fear of that, right? Because I have an active relationship with God, and no, I'm not a perfect person. I'm far from perfect. I make a ton of mistakes, but I try my best to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, which have led me into a life of love. But absent that, yes, I would imagine you would be trying to stay here for as long as humanly possible, because there's something probably running in their subconscious mind that tells them once they check out of here, they're not going to a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be a day of judgment for absolutely everyone. And so if your, main focus is to make transhumanism a reality to the point of merging man and machine to where you will essentially live forever, what exactly are you trying to escape? It's the judgment. You've done some wrong things, and now we're getting people talking about, in this age of AI and quantum computing, that eventually you'll be able to upload your conscience to an AI machine, and therefore live forever. And again, if that's something people are interested in, you got to question your motives there. What exactly are you afraid of? And that's a big part to do with transhumanism that a lot of these globalist elitists are pushing these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the MAID, everybody remembers that Simon's commercial. It went ultra viral. Joe Rogan was talking about it. People, very popular American commentators were talking about that Simon's ad that ran, which was really spooky, because why is a retail clothing chain promoting MAID to the general public, right?
I don't think I've seen that one.
You haven't seen it? Okay. After we're done here, search it up on YouTube. It's a 13-minute ad spot with a young woman who is dying of, I can't remember what disease, but it's like a 10-minute promotion for MAID, ran by Simons.
Yeah.
Right. And she's on the beach. I think it's
sitting on a bench on the beach.
Yeah, I think it's in Victoria or Vancouver or somewhere like that. And they're all holding hands in the wilderness and having like a Last Supper sort of deal for her. And there's all these lights around. And it's really beautifully shot, but it is the most dystopic thing.
Yeah,
I think I may have ever seen. Like what I'm getting to here is that it's like they don't care anymore. Like they're not trying to hide it. They want us to die. They're trying to tell us in the nicest possible way. But if we're not going to just die, then they will find ways to kill us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're coming up with. I've heard there are death parties, so to speak, where they will, you choose your last meal, you choose what kind of music might be playing while you exit, and then you've got literally machines like the death pod that I believe was invented by a guy in Switzerland, I think, which is something where you get inside of this thing and you are the one who presses the button when you're ready, and it releases some sort of a CO2 gas, and you die within minutes of pressing the button. But they say this is a humane and peaceful way to do this. It's like you said, it's absolutely dystopian. Having machines that you crawl into and press a button for your death is beyond evil, really. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing things like that here in Canada soon.
Yeah. And, you talk to people. I've talked to people who are big supporters of the MAID program. They're not out there worshiping MAID, but they're definitely in support of it. Mm-hmm. And every single one of those people, I have to say, seemed to be terminally miserable to me. Like there was, and again, I hate to keep harping on this for our non-believer listeners, because I know there's a lot of you, but you just see this absence of God in these people, an absence of anything, whatever God is to you. It doesn't have to be the Christian God, could be the Islamic God, could be the nature God, whatever it is, but an absence of some form of spiritual connection to something, some belief that they're part of something bigger. It's like this lonely misery and self-hatred, almost like they're waiting for their own number to be called so that they can slip into the pod and disappear. And it's such a bleak, horrific way of looking at the gift of human life,
It really is, and let's not forget the gift of salvation. If these people only knew that there was an option for escaping death, which is essentially what the New Testament teaches us how to do, they may think very differently about MAID if they knew that was an option, that God has prepared for you, a new body where there will be no more pain, there will be no more suffering, and you can live in existence with him. But if it is your life's choice, your free will to live separate from God, then obviously he's not going to drag you into eternity with him. He's going to respect your wishes for free will, and he's going to say, if you want to live a life without me, well, then you will live a life without me for eternity. And that is essentially what hell is, just separation from your creator for eternity. So really, that's a choice, unfortunately, that people are making. But had they known that there is an answer to death, there is an answer to the pain and the suffering, and that is, putting your faith in Jesus Christ, repenting, and following his teachings and ways, then you will be accepted. And it's not about the works that you have to do. It's not about anything that you have to, measure yourself on the scales of good and bad. That's where Christianity differs from all the other religions. It's not about what you do. It's all about the grace of your creator offering you the free gift of salvation. So if only people actually had a true understanding of what actually happened on that cross, maybe they would be thinking twice about MAID, realizing that they can live forever in God's presence.
Yeah, and it's also this manipulation of the idea of compassion and empathy and love. Like leading with love is not, and that's where I think the root of it really lies, is that we have lost sight of what love is. We don't know it anymore. A lot of people. I mean, we assume that it's, oh, I like this person and this is a person that I enjoy spending my time with. But love is extending yourself in moments of need. Love is bringing something to the world that reflects kindness and understanding, and bringing value to people who may not feel or see value in themselves. And I think that's a big part of it, is that we have not just manipulated, we've almost inversed the definition of love, what love means and what it is. I could never, I have a lot of people in my life that I love, and I could never imagine, okay, during COVID-19, so I'm from Vancouver originally. Right by where I lived, there was a seniors facility. And during COVID, I would go up to the park every day with my daughter. And we were walking by the seniors facility one day, and there's all these people standing outside with signs. And these senior citizens sitting inside by the window, watching their children and their grandchildren hold up signs and wave to them and say, I love you. And I was like, this is the most disgusting, depressing fucking thing I've ever seen. These are the people who took care of you, and you're leaving them there to die. Mm-hmm. And you're holding a fucking sign out front saying, wish I could help you. Well, you can. You can walk in the doors and go get them. And if that was my mother or my grandmother, there's no fucking way, there's no chance that they were going to sit there and I would just stand outside with my mask on holding a sign. But it's indicative of the level of brainwashing that people have gone through, and now are, these I don't want to refer to them as like viruses, but it's like they're an extension of the propaganda now.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you know, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms just released a bombshell report about manufacturing consent during the COVID era.
That's right.
And it really delves deep into how they were able to manipulate the mindset of people into getting to the point where they're going to stand outside of their own grandma's house without visiting them or saying hello or using some sort of plastic shield to give them a hug, all this ridiculous stuff. It was through conditioning. It was through a program that was set up for manipulating your thoughts and behaviors, but behavioral conditioning. And it was methodical. It was scientific. It was like, implemented by these behavioral experts who understand how propaganda works and how the human psyche can be manipulated into going along with something like COVID-1984, as I like to call it. And that was a bombshell report that really showed how they used a multiple of different techniques to test how the human population is going to react to something like COVID, and then what sort of responses are going to work in order for them to not be afraid of the solution, which of course is the global inoculation mass vaccine program. So that report was pretty wild. The fact that it vindicated what you and I and others have been saying for the last 5 years about how this stuff works. It's all coming out now about the fact that we've been psychologically manipulated into getting to that point. Had it been left on its own, I don't think those grandkids and family members would be standing outside in their masks with signs in the way that they were. It was highly manipulated through the TV, obviously, and through these behavioral modification techniques that they've been engaging in.
Yeah, and I think one of them was called the nudge technique. But they found that the throw the sink at it technique was the best way. Dan, can you describe what these things are?
Yeah, it all started with the nudge theory that came out of the United Kingdom through people like Cass Sunstein and others who were using behavioral modification techniques on people in a essentially a psychological operation. This is a mass psyop. So they had things like gist framing, manufacturing consent to the idea of explaining the science in such a way that you are not going to be afraid of it, but you're going to go willingly along with things. Conditional framing, where they would give you options like, hey, I mean, it's safer than going for a drive in your car, for instance. And then they realized that the kitchen sink approach was probably the best, where you just throw all of it into the mix. And so just doubt, intimidation, and these types of tactics were what they realized works best. But there is a way to break through all of this, and I've seen it in my own experience. I don't know if you're familiar with the Asch conformity experiment.
No,
this is a guy. Professor Asch, he set up this experiment where he had a group of people, and they're all in on it, except for one guy. And so you picture about 7 or 8 people in a room, and he would show them like a picture of a line and then a clearly a smaller line, and he would say which one is the bigger line. And what they did is they would have everybody involved in this experiment would give incorrect answers. And so when it came to the test subject, often they would conform to the group. And even though they know their cognitive dissonance would kick in, they know the correct answer, but so as to not disrupt the group, so as to not be an outsider, a black sheep or whatever, they would go along with the group. And this showed how easily humans can be manipulated around others. And time and time again throughout this experiment, they would the people involved would give the incorrect answer, and the test subject would, knowing the correct answer, just go along with the group. And it showed how easily people could be manipulated. But what a lot of people don't know about the Asch conformity experiment is that the guy conducting this experiment introduced another factor. he put in a second person to say the correct answer. So now this time, there would be a wrong answer, a wrong answer, a wrong answer, and then the correct answer, and then the test subject. And what they found was that simply by introducing one more person to actually say the correct answer, conformity dropped by approximately 35%. And that gives me chills just thinking about it, because what that means is that what it takes is just for people to do the right thing, and that inspires others to say, yes, I can stand out and do the right thing simply by seeing one other person do it. And I experienced that in my own life when I was in a grocery store once during the thick of it, where every single person in this store was wearing a mask. 100% of everybody in there, except for me. I never put on a mask throughout the whole thing. And this guy came up to me and he's like, hey, you're Dan Dix, you Press for Truth guy. I love your stuff, man. And nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. How you doing? And he just stops mid-sentence and goes, wait a minute, you're not wearing a mask. How are you doing this? And I was like, well, I just never have. I mean, it's a choice. It's an option. I tell them at the door, if they give me a problem, that I'm not going to do it. And rarely it's an issue. And if it is, I boycott that place and I don't go. And the guy right there on the spot rips off his mask and he says, that is so inspiring. I'm never wearing this damn thing ever again.
Yeah.
And again, that was the Ash conformity experiment proving itself that with just one in this simulated experiment who does the right thing is going to inspire others to do what they know is right, which just goes to show how important it is to live with integrity and do what you know is the right thing in truth.
Yeah, and it's interesting how this propaganda that surrounds us all the time, both on social media, legacy media, everywhere. I mean, we're just swimming in it. But it is incredible how it does tap into that tribal desire to want to be part of the tribe, right? Like, it's a survival instinct that we have as people. It's embedded in us, because in the past, if you were extricated from your tribe, you were dead. You weren't going to survive on your own. So we still have that in our DNA. And what's interesting, I was listening to your story and it made me think of it, because so I'm in Alberta now. I go out, and as my podcast grows, I get noticed more and more and more, right? People walking up to me, hey, Brave New Normal, hell yeah, man. And the thing that I've tried to do is I try to give everybody a hug, because I've noticed that through doing that, I'm like filling them with love in a way, just through that simple act. And I notice their behavior even with me, and they're happy to see me sometimes. Other times I'm in the grocery store and some middle-aged woman calls me a Nazi. Had that happen before a couple of times. It's not fun. But I've noticed that that's kind of like the power of it. The power of just putting something simple into somebody else, and it just reverberates through the world. So that's kind of like the alternate version of that, is that you can use that to put love into the world. However, these people are just interested in control and destruction and destroying the human spirit. And I think at the core of it, like, one of the questions I was going to ask you, but I guess I'll lead with this. I believe that the overarching purpose is to destroy the human spirit. Do you feel the same way?
Well, that's more and more what it's looking to be like. I mean, that seems to be the end game agenda. Because ultimately, it's not about money. They literally print the money. Yeah. It's not about power. They already essentially have the power. This is spiritual warfare that we are engaged in. When you really step back and look at the big picture, what the true end game agenda is. And that's what it is. I mean, it's literally comes down to this, the attack on the souls that need to be saved. And that's something that a lot of people like to ignore in this battle for freedom, and it's something that more and more as I do this, I started in 2006. I'm on year 19, 19 years of doing Press for Truth. I used to kind of want to keep my spiritual beliefs and ideas a little bit separate. I was like, maybe I should just stick to like facts, things that I can prove with Press for Truth. But then I realized, well, if I'm not truly telling people what I think is the real end game and what this is really about, then what am I doing this for? And so I've been incorporating my beliefs into what I do more and more and more these days, because that's the big picture. That's the end game agenda. And if we're not trying to warn people that we're engaged in spiritual warfare here, then what exactly are we doing this for? So yeah, that's, I think, what, to answer that question, that's what it's all about.
I think so too. I was, God called me home a couple of years ago. And so I've had a lot of time to meditate on this and really think about what's happening. And, I've come to the conclusion, well, I've really come to two major conclusions that have really shifted my perspective in life. First is that when you put yourself into service to God, God puts you in service to people. And I've had that proven to me time and time and time again. But the other one is that the human spirit, or humanity as we know it, really is the spirit of God. And those two things are synonymous. And I think that's what they're trying to crush. I think they're trying to create this wide gap between the people and God. And I think that there are people who are tuned into what's happening, because you're seeing this revival, like this Christian revival all around the world. There's so many people that I've known for years who are now cracking open the New Testament. And like for myself, I'm going way off into like, who was the real Jesus Christ? I got the Gnostic Gospels and the New Testament on my dresser. I'm reading the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm really digging in to find Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, right? So there's this like spiritual exploration that's happening all over the world. People reaching out to me, people that I know personally. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I think that in reaction to this push toward a global totalitarian technocratic prison, the spirit is returning and it's flowing through people. And I really do believe God's calling the warriors.
Well, I love that you're going to these source documents, because, if people are putting, their questions of Christ because of Christianity, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Christianity has been used as justification for the Salem witch trials, for the Inquisition, for the Crusades. All sorts of hypocritical Christians have done bad things that put a bad light on it and make people step back and question this whole thing, when really all those things tell you about are about hypocritical people.
Yeah.
They don't tell you anything about Jesus Christ, who, taught the opposite of what a lot of these people did. So if people are truly seeking for truth, and this is something I've always said, in a true pursuit of truth, eventually you're going to come to Jesus Christ, and you're going to have to decide as a researcher, is he who he said he was, the truth, the way, and the life, or isn't he? And if you find that he was a madman, he was a con man, he was not the Son of God, then reject him. But if the evidence points to him being who he said he was, and I think his death and resurrection added a great deal of credibility to him being who he said he was, then it would be wise to put your faith in him. So going to the source documents is key. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, some of the eyewitness accounts, and learning about how he lived his life. How did he treat people? How did he live it out? Literally up to the point of his death, being nailed on a cross. And instead of cursing his enemies, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." This is the kind of a person all of us would like to live up to, but we fail miserably time and time again. Yeah. So once you go to the source documents and you realize that this guy is a real historical figure, and you have to decide, is he the truth or isn't he? I hate the argument, and I find it funny sometimes, that people say he was a brilliant man, he was a good prophet, he had a lot of good teachings, solid dude, but he wasn't God as he claimed to be. Well, that's a ridiculous statement because of the extreme nature of Jesus's claims. He claimed to be God in human form. So there's only one or the other. He's either a madman, a lying con man, and a lunatic, or he was God in human form, as he claimed to be. So you can't have it. You can't say, you know, I think he was a good, smart teacher, but he's not God. Well, that doesn't make sense because of the extreme nature of his claims. So
Yeah.
again, you have to go to the source documents and read them as historical documents, and ask yourself, is he speaking the truth or isn't he? And that's something that I think every single researcher is going to eventually come to that area, because when you're searching for truth, he literally said, I am the truth. Not just, he's not saying, I say true things. He's saying,
Yeah.
I am the truth. Truth is personified into a person, me. And so all roads, when you're searching for truth, lead to him. And like I said, the researcher is going to have to decide, is he who he said he was, or isn't he? And I've come to realize that he is.
Yeah, I mean, myself personally, I've been thinking a lot lately about this. Like, I feel that if people were able to peel Jesus Christ away from the Christianity that developed out of the Apostle Paul and Rome, that they would have a better understanding of who Jesus was, because there was a lot, like you said, over the years, Christianity has done a lot of terrible things, Rome specifically, but, you know, to go on from there. And, you know, a lot of what has come out of Christianity, even recently, is antithetical to Jesus's message. Right. And for people who are watching this, if you're really interested, I really do recommend Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but I also recommend the Gospel of Thomas, which is just a collection of Jesus's sayings. Right. Because once you dig deeper into him, you get a better, well-rounded understanding of what he was really about. And Jesus's core message is love. Love your neighbor, love your enemy. That is really the core message. And that the way to salvation is through love and following his example. That's why he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's trying to say, follow my example, follow me, follow what I do, and you will have salvation. You know, do good works, to put love into the world. And I think if people understood that message a little bit better and just ignored the religious stuff, and whether religion is your bag or not, that's entirely up to you. But what I'm saying is, just drill down into Jesus's message. It resonates. You know, it really resonates, and it resonates with something deep inside of you. And that's the spirit. That's the spirit, your spirit, that is connected to the outside, that they are trying to cut you off from. They are trying to disconnect you. And, you know, for non-believers and people watching this, I know this all sounds crazy, but I just want to encourage you to just explore a little bit, because as Dan said, like, it's not money. They have all the money, right? It's not land. They have all the land, and what land they don't have, they're taking it back now, right? It's not power, because they have the power, as we've seen over the last 10 years. Our constitutions mean nothing to these people. They only meant something previously when they needed to maintain the facade, but the facade is over. So forget about your Bill of Rights, your Constitution, your Charter of Rights and Freedoms. None of that means anything. So what are they after? What is this about? And yes, it is about destroying the spirit of God, which is also the human spirit. And that's the conclusion I've come to, because, like what you said, what else could they want to take?
Mm-hmm. And that's why, like you said, we're seeing a massive a revival these days. People are starting to see this for what it truly is. And I think with the recent murdering of Charlie Kirk, a man who was very based in God, who understood the Bible, who frequently spoke about, you know, the need for salvation through Jesus, he inspired a whole bunch of people to pick up their Bibles, to start going back to church, and to start actually reading the source documents, and to, you know, trying to essentially reconnect with their Creator. So that was inspiring for me to see the amount of inspiration that he caused in terms of the Christian revival all over the world. That just goes to show, if we continue to you know, speak the truth and spread the gospel, which is the good news, that's all it means.
Yeah.
Then you know, good things are going to come of that. And you know, I think that was if there could be anything that good coming out of that terrible assassination, it would be that it sparked a bit of a revival. I personally know people who are now reading their Bible and going to church because of the fact that they want to learn about what Charlie Kirk knew about.
Yeah.
So that's it's an inspiring thing, really.
Yeah, and I think that there's just this instinctual feeling that people are, a disturbance in the force, should we say, right? Like this instinctual feeling that people have that there is something deeply wrong. Like, not just get out on the streets and protest because, this one thing is really bad, but these bureaucracies, the Western hemisphere appears to be all at once following the diktats of a death cult. And we can see it in Canada, the ostrich call. You did a report recently about an animal sanctuary. Dan, can you cover that really quickly for people who are unaware? Because this is where this all goes.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure people have probably heard about the ostrich situation where over 300 birds were killed at the hands of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, all because 2 of the carcasses that got sick were tested with PCR tests, totally bogus. Found to have had H5N1, another fairy tale that they're trying to concern human beings with. And where that farm went wrong was by allowing the CFIA onto their property to conduct these tests. Sure enough, it led to the point of all of them being slaughtered. Well, they're not done. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is now going after other farms, backyard chickens, and literally animal sanctuaries. There's another one here in British Columbia who they literally are dealing with rescued pets. And the CFIA has said, looks like you've got a couple of H5N1 cases on your property. We're going to have to come in. We're going to have to do testing. And so there's this concerted effort by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to essentially gain control of every beak, claw, and feather in the country, because it basically comes down to doing away with small-time farmers and food sovereignty. Is what it's an attack on. Because Henry Kissinger said it best. He said, you control the food and you control people. You control everything. And so, we've seen this area over the last decade with Monsanto, trying to, with their Terminator seeds, it's called, where they were forcing farmers to buy seed from them, and this seed is engineered to not produce crop that makes seeds, so they'd have to buy from them every single year in this continual cycle. And people started speaking out about that. That kind of fizzled out, but now people are seeing the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, going around slaughtering healthy birds, healthy animals, even pets. So you got to ask yourself, where is this, leading? What's the natural progression here? Is it eventually going to be, people? I mean, I guess it could be argued they're already going for people through the MAID program, but this whole Canadian Food Inspection Agency situation is very quickly spiraling out of control, and I'm glad people are recognizing it for what it is.
Yeah, well, I spoke to Walter Kern briefly. For people who don't know who he is, he's one of the great living writers of our time, co-host of America This Week with Matt Taibbi, working on getting him on Brave New Normal. But we talked briefly about it, and he said on the podcast and privately, they start with the ostriches and they end with people. Like that's the natural progression. And once again, I don't want to make this whole episode a dive into religious dogma, but they're going after God's creations. Like this is just murder for murder's sake. And yes, absolutely, they don't want. They want to go after self-sustaining farms, people who produce food for the people. Of course they do. But why would you go after a bunch of abandoned pets? You have to want to murder. Like that has to be the driver. And then you have to ask yourself, why? Why do they want to kill everything? And Dan, we can close on this, but you did a report covering a report from a group called Right Now, where they went and into a clinic in Toronto that was doing late-term abortions. Dan, can you talk about that really quick?
Yeah, this is an activist organization who set up a secret undercover sting operation, essentially, where they were filming themselves going around to various abortion clinics to prove that late-term abortions are not only happening in Canada, but they are happening with extreme ease. This one, the co-founder of the organization was, I think, 26 weeks pregnant, and she's going across, getting suggestions that, oh yeah, no problem, you can have a late term abortion. She literally has them on tape saying that you can do it for any reason you want. You just make up any reason, it doesn't matter, and you can do this. And so people for the longest time thought, no, that doesn't happen, in Canada. It's only if the mother's life is in danger will they ever do something like that. Well, no, that's absolutely not true. This expose just blew the lid off of this thing and showed that indeed late-term abortions are not only happening, but they are being encouraged by these counselors and doctors who are saying, yeah, go for it. If you just are feeling financially burdened, if you just don't want the kid, you don't even have to give us a reason. Just come on in and we'll do it for you. So yeah, people want to see that. I kind of showed the expose, and that was just one of 3 or 4 videos. They're continuing to slow roll these exposés out. So I would encourage people to check them out. It's called Right Now, and they're about to release more videos where they've gone into abortion clinics in Vancouver, in Ontario, and other places all around Canada to show this is a nationwide thing that's happening under the radar, that people don't even realize it's happening, that babies are being murdered right up to the point of just before birth. You got to ask yourself, what's the difference, of killing the baby inside a day before it was born or a day after it was born? Is there really a difference? Obviously,
Optics.
I would argue not. It's killing a life, no matter how you look at it. So that, again, it adds to this whole eugenics program, the MAID program. And now you put on top of that, literally babies in the womb are being slaughtered. Canada has turned into a death cult. And again, this is why we have to question, what is this truly all about? What's truly going on here? And spiritual warfare is the most logical kind of the thing that makes most sense, because that's what it is.
Well, it has to be. There's no other rational explanation for it. I mean, what kind of monster would rip a fully I mean a child, period, but a fully developed child out of a mother's womb? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like this is where we are now. Like our human life and the human spirit has been so devalued that we would rip a child out of a mother's womb and consider it some form of healthcare procedure, a procedure that is open and available to everyone. I watched that video again this morning, and it is so disturbing. Mm-hmm. And for people watching this, Press for Truth is linked below, or if you're on an audio streamer, in the episode description, you can go watch Dan's coverage of it, and through there get to Right Now. It's so disturbing, the way that just the nonchalance in which this is discussed. You would imagine a scenario where a woman goes to an emergency room. She's 6 months or 7 months pregnant. She's bleeding. The baby is no longer viable. They have to induce labor, and it's like this really heavy, life-altering moment. I mean, that's the way I think we as good people imagine it. But the way they're talking about it is, it's like it's a thing. It's like a tree stump to be removed from your yard. Mm-hmm. This is what we do, and we do this all the way up until then. And we, if we can't do it here, you can go across the street to this place and they'll do it all. And it's like, yeah, the difference between a life still in the womb and a life outside of the room is just optics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the pressing issues that Canadians are not aware of. Like you said, they have this misconception about why these things are happening. But as it turns out, as was shown in this expose, it's not only not happening like that, but it's happening for reasons of purely inconvenience
Mm.
to the mother, which is downright evil murder. You can't put it any other way.
Well, we're a half step away from taking quadriplegics out into the woods and putting a bullet in their head, just like they did in the Third Reich.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's, you know, I think people they have this cognitive dissonance with historical events, and Nazi Germany is always the point of reference because it's the only dictatorial regime anybody is ever aware of, right? That has any sense of. And I think that they think that like living in Nazi Germany during, you know, especially the early period before the war really kicked off, was like this dark, restricted place where people were all being oppressed. No, people are still going to the grocery store. They were still going out to the discotheque. They were still going to the bars and hanging out with their families. No. It was just, I don't know, if you walked with a little bit of a limp and you were going through the Wilhelmstrasse at night, a van pulled up, pulled you in, and you were gone. And we're doing the same thing. But what's scary to me about this is that we're doing it right out in the open.
Yeah. Not only in the open, it's being legislated. They're putting pen to paper to, you know, make it like legal, and then encouraging doctors and counselors to push this type of stuff on people.
Yeah.
So it's even worse.
Yeah, and it makes, like, myself personally, and I know for a lot of people watching this, it makes you second guess going to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is another form of eugenics, because if you're afraid to go to the doctor, go into the healthcare system. I can't remember if it was a report you did or if it was one I heard somewhere else, but they were talking about people who were actually afraid to go to the doctor because they suffered from pre-existing conditions. So that's another extension of this, right? Because you may have some form of health condition that they may recommend MAID for, so you don't go to the doctor, you don't get the help you need, and you just die on your own.
Yeah, that's probably all by design as well, you know. And it is a scary time though to have to, you know. This is why it's so important to take your health very seriously now. You know, to eat good, clean foods, to get your exercise, to, you know, focus on your mental well-being, because these days you really don't want to be forced into a situation of having to go to one of these places. COVID showed us just how bad it can be. So, you know, that's why it's so incredibly important now to for people to focus on their health like they never have before, by eating clean, by, you know, getting good exercise. And again, it all comes down to, you know, spiritual well-being as well. You know, it's not just the physical we have to worry about. It's the spiritual. That's the end game. So again, comes down to, you know, get back to reconnecting with your creator, the one who designed, you know, your body, and focus on that moving forward is I think what people need to concern themselves with.
Absolutely. And what I recommend for people who are looking to do that is just start with what seems right to you. Start with what seems right to you. And, you know, God speaks to us through our consciousness and through our conscience, our conscientious voice. So just listen to your instincts and follow that road if that's what you're looking to do. Dan, I was going to ask you one final question, but you already gave the answer, and it was, how do we get out of this? And I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to reestablish some form of spiritual connection, because that is what they are after. That is what they are trying to destroy. Yeah. And you, the ultimate form of resistance is to establish that connection, right?
And like we said, go to the source documents, you know, study the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You know, Matthew, Mark, and John were literally eyewitnesses who were there, and Luke, you know, knew eyewitnesses. So these are the source documents. And if you simply look at as historical documents, again, learn about who he was, how he lived his life, how he treated other people, and how he physically and bodily rose from the dead. that adds to his credibility. Then again, you're going to come to that question of is he the truth or isn't he? And I think that's the most important question for any truth seeker. They're eventually going to come across this, and they have to face it head on. I would encourage people. I mean, I don't want to like. You have to be careful a little bit with some of the other Gospels. You mentioned the Gospel of Thomas, and the reason why that was not included in the Bible by the early church followers is because there is an element there where it contradicts what Jesus taught and said, in the sense that it's following a philosophy of Gnosticism, which is basically putting knowledge as the ultimate, and it teaches, for example, things that are directly contradictory to what Jesus and God taught. That Gnosticism and things like the Gospel of Thomas actually say that, you know, the body is bad and the spirit is good. The physical is bad and the spirit is what is good. Whereas no, the Bible and Jesus and God say both are good. The Bible, the body and the spirit, because they were both created by God for a purpose. And essentially, some of these Gnostic Gospels don't give divinity to Christ in the physical resurrection, the physical bodied resurrection of Christ. So, I mean, not, you know, I'm glad you're looking into all of it. That's good. You got to do your due diligence. You got to look at it all. But there was a reason why the early church fathers kept some of these Gnostic Gospels out of it, because some of it does contradict what Jesus was saying. So I would, if you're new to this, kind of stick to the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and study those source documents. And again, ask yourself, is he who he said he was, or isn't he?
Dan, my brother, I would love to crack open this subject with you. I think we got a 3-hour conversation ahead of us someday. And for people who are listening, listen, I was as skeptical as anyone else. I am a natural born cynic and skeptic. Once you crack open Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you start reading into what Jesus actually said, not what some pastor on some pulpit tells you he said, but by cracking it open yourself and reading it, I promise you, it jumps out and grabs you. I don't know anybody who is capable of reading those Gospels and not finding a connection to it. Jesus, the subtext to the things that he was saying, the parables and the metaphors that he was using is just, it's incredible. And if you're looking for proof that Jesus Christ was a real person and a real teacher and a real leader, just do yourself a favor and just crack open Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John and just start reading. And you can only just read one page. That's my challenge to you. Just read one page. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, if what he says doesn't grab you, put it down, give it time, return to it later. But
I'm pretty sure the Gospels, all 4 books, are only 127 pages.
That's right.
You know, yeah. It's not like it doesn't take a whole lot to read it all. Yeah. And like you said, when you do, you're going to see this is the stuff of ethical genius. All ethics over the last couple of thousand years have been based on the Sermon on the Mount and some of the incredible things that Jesus taught. And some people would say, oh, there's contradictions between the different stories. No, there's different perspectives between the different stories that happen. And when you read it, you see this tremendous harmony that happens. In fact, with the entire Bible that was written over a period of 1,500 years, 66 books, over 40 authors, you see this tremendous internal harmony between all of it. That's only can be inspired by God, written through men. So again, I would, as you said, encourage people to just do your due diligence. You start, checking it out for yourself. Don't take it from me. Don't take it from you. Go to the source documents, check it out for yourself. Ask yourself, is Jesus the truth or isn't he? If he's not, reject him. If he is, put your faith in him. It's as simple as that.
Literally, just read one passage. Just read one passage. And if it doesn't speak to you, which I know it will, because you're a conscientious person, you watch this podcast, so you have to be in order to sit through an hour of these discussions, just read one passage. And again, I'm not trying to push this on anybody. That's just my challenge to you, because for myself, it literally took God throwing me off a cliff for me to come back. So if I highly doubt you're as stubborn as I, and I made my way back, so you can too. Dan, before we get out of here, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. The best place to go is pressfortruth.ca. Of course, I'm on all the major platforms like Rumble and BitChute and Odyssey and Band and Minds and Hive and YouTube. Although my channel was terminated from YouTube in 2020, and then I got it back in 2022, and then it was terminated again, and then I just got it back like 6 months ago. Having it gone since 2022, so there is a good chance I'll be terminated again from that platform. So if you are exclusively there, please subscribe to me on other places like BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. But again, the best place to go is pressfortruth.ca. And that's where you can stay up with everything I'm doing.
And guys, I cannot recommend this man enough. That's where I've been going. I stumbled into your stuff a few months ago, and I can't stop. You are on my daily list of places I go to see what's going on in the world. Guys, Dan is nonpartisan, just a guy who's out there exposing some of the most important issues of the day. So, Dan, I look forward to having you back, man. I really want to dig into that New Testament conversation with you. I think there's a big conversation there. And but until then, man, thank you so much for your time. It was really an honor having you on, and I look forward to the next time.
Awesome, man. You keep up the great work. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks, brother.